Shalom, brothers and sisters. Now, I usually cover natural disasters, storms, and the groanings of the actual planet on the community wall on a daily basis, updating you with as much as I can find for that moment, which is usually just the tip of the iceberg, barely scratching the surface of what's going on as the world is literally quaking in preparation. Sorry for that final week. Now, I am going to take a moment because it is so bad to talk about Hurricane Helene and just share some of the latest articles and news coming out of there and talk to you about that for a second. Because I think we need to stop and just take a moment. Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina on the 25th of September and was the second worst hurricane since Katrina. Dumped 40 trillion gallons of water in a short amount of time, causing unprecedented flooding and mudslides, with water having no place to go. The flooding caused widespread devastation. Whole towns were washed away. Over 1 million people still without power in North Carolina and South Carolina. And you go watch these videos and look at the footage where there used to be a lake. It's no lake anymore. It's just debris from what used to be the town in that area. Everything is gone. The government's response to the crisis obviously has been slow. Now, there's talk about the fact that these are red states, and maybe that's why it's slow, that it's been used in the whole political run-up to the elections. I don't know. Is it possible? Absolutely, because leadership is evil. So it is a crisis. Their response, unacceptably slow in the situation. President Biden only approved 1,000 soldiers on the 2nd of October, days after the emergency was declared, even though the affected area is the size of Massachusetts. The initial emergency declarations only covered 11 counties, despite devastation in up to 90 counties. How does that even make sense from a government perspective? Florida has been warned now that a once-in-a-lifetime storm is on the way, and Floridians have been asked to brace for what could be the largest evacuation since Hurricane Irma in 2017. It's insanity. You can't even wrap your mind about how bad this is. So let's look at the whole funding and the response thing. State official lashes out at Biden admin over depleted FEMA funds spent on migrants. Now, they're saying now, no, that's rubbish. It's fake news. But you can go back and watch the press briefings at the White House where she literally says that is where they're getting money for the migrants, out of her own mouth. Now, that same human being is saying it's fake news. And that sums up your government at the moment. Even though states across the southeastern U.S. are reeling from Hurricane Helene's destructive path, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas warned FEMA does not have funds to get them through hurricane season. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody shredded the secretary over the comments, pointing out that there's more than $1 billion spent on migrants. Ashley Moody, everyone should be waking up this morning outraged by that comment. This is not something that just happened recently, and Florida's been warning about this since the administration took over. Mayorkas warns that FEMA is running low on funds for the rest of hurricane season. We are meeting immediate needs with the money that we have, Mayorkas told reporters. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have funds. FEMA does not have funds to make it through the season. Although the true level of devastation is still unfolding, it is clear that Congress must act to meet the unmet needs in our states and address the scope and scale of destruction. With a stopgap bill Mr. Biden signed into law last week contained an additional $16 billion for FEMA, preliminary assessments of the damage for Moody's and others predict a cleanup effort that could cost tens of billions of dollars. Biden traveled to South Carolina on the Wednesday to extend his support. They described a sprawling response that included airdrops of food and aid and deployment of 6,000 members of the National Guard in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. Harris, now this is where it gets interesting, pledges to send $157 million of additional assistance to Lebanon, arguing they are facing an increasingly dire humanitarian situation. What about the Americans that are struggling in the recovery from this entire hurricane crisis in America? Users on social media took aim at Kamala Harris after the Democratic nominee took to X to pledge millions of dollars to Lebanon at the same time that residents of North Carolina are struggling to recover from Hurricane Helene. This has to be fake. Even Kamala Harris, the gold standard of stupid, isn't stupid enough to post this, actor James Woods said on X. Certainly not while North Carolinians are pulling bodies out of their wreckage of neighbors. It's inconceivable. The post came in response to Harris's pledging to send the $157 million of additional assistance to Lebanon. Kamala is touting giving money to the people of Lebanon while stiff-arming the humanitarian crisis in North Carolina. This is Kamala's Katrina, Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Now, what blows my mind here, and forgive me, I'm not an American, I'm just trying to understand. If you're running for president and you guys have like two people, Trump, Kamala, and they are diametrically opposed to one another, hugely so. Now, you want to win over the rest of the base. Wouldn't this have been, and yes, it's wrong to use things for politics, but in the real world, they do. Now, if she was intelligent, she would have launched in there, gone herself with work clothes on, put all of her political stuff on hold, gotten in there, brought soldiers with trucks, food, aid, sat, put up a whole tent, and controlled the whole thing from ground zero. She would have won with a landslide because everybody would have seen, wow, she's actually doing something. Now, say the same thing for Trump, but Trump's not currently in administration and power, but still, why aren't they in there hands-on doing something about it? And yes, I'm frustrated because I'm thinking about the people on the ground. Despite FEMA claiming they have no more disaster funds, Inspector General's report says the agency is sitting on billions of dollars. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas faces a new firestorm of criticism for claiming FEMA is out of disaster funds. Then the Inspector General released a report saying FEMA is sitting on at least $8.3 billion in untapped, unspent funds. Now, the way they explain it, as I squizzed through the article just quickly, is funds were allocated for disasters, specific disasters. So there'll be funds allocated for disaster Helene. Boom, so much. Let's say 5 billion. 5 billion is allocated. They use 3. 2 billion is frozen under that heading in their account forever. The interest Biden and his cronies can play with, so they have a slush fund. So there's all this money, more than $8 billion, but it's tied up and not accessible because it's allocated to previous disasters all the way back in time. How does that even begin to make sense except for it being an evil situation for them to be able to have a slush fund for their own nefarious purposes? How does this help the person on the ground who's lost everything? It makes no sense unless you're evil. SC pilot flying volunteer supply and rescue missions ordered out of Lake Lure under threat of arrest. When Jordan Sidham woke up Saturday morning, he saw a Facebook post that tens of thousands of people were commenting on and sharing, a family stranded on a mountain in North Carolina. So he loads up his son or nephew or something and supplies, and off they fly with his plane, and he goes to go and render assistance. He renders assistance for a while, and he's actually doing quite a lot and achieving quite a lot, and they're using the chopper to get people out of hard to reach areas where they're stranded and getting them to safety, and suddenly, bam, they clamp down on him and threaten to arrest him if he continues with these efforts. I mean, come on, this is America. Americans generally want to help Americans. That's how it used to be. So when they see the need, they want to come with supplies, they want to come with their choppers and their planes, they want to assist. and they're being shut down. How does that make sense? I mean, he said he was 100% following all their protocols. He was willing to submit to all their plans and everything that they've laid out. He doesn't want to work against them or cause chaos. They're still not interested. He must take his chopper and get out. When you have people stranded all over the mountains, he's doing this out of his pocket. It's costing him money, not anybody else. How does that even begin to make sense? And then there's rumors, and I don't want to get into the whole conspiracy side of this, but I'm sorry, I believe this when I see how evil governments are, that FEMA's hindering or hampering efforts, that they're not allowing food to go in, that when food and supplies come in, they confiscate it and take it to the FEMA side. How does any of this make sense? Isn't it supposed to be, let's all work together and get these people sorted as fast as possible, because guess what? There's another storm coming. A lot of people are going to stand before God and have to do a lot of explaining very soon. Disinformation and conspiracy theories been blamed for hampering recovery efforts from Hurricane Helene. If everyone could maybe please put aside the hate for a bit and pitch in to help, that would be great, posted Glenn Jacobs, retired professional wrestler, who is now Republican mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. FEMA says that criticism of how they are handling Helene recovery is dangerous. People need to stop spreading false narratives. The administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, argued Sunday that criticizing the agency's response is dangerous. In an interview on ABC, Dean Criswell addressed public outcry over the federal government's response to Helene, warning that the false narrative spread online about the agency's handling of the hurricane will hinder FEMA's recovery efforts. It has a tremendous impact on the comfort level of our own employees to be able to go out there, and it's also demoralizing to first responders, FEMA staff, volunteers. Her comments faced immediate backlash online, with critics slamming the top disaster relief official for playing the victim card in a crisis of this magnitude. In this time of crisis, the important thing to remember is protecting the feelings of FEMA workers, Grabian founder Tom Elliott wrote alongside Criswell's ABC experience. Really? Left-wing hosts slammed for using Bible to justify abortion and saying hurricane may be punishment for the red states. Uyghur took to X on Friday to make sure everyone stays in the muck by suggesting Helene is punishment from God against states where abortion is outlawed. It was also noted how idiotic it was for Uyghur, an atheist, to tell the rest of us how to interpret God's judgment in apparently bringing on Helene. So, since they're incorrectly quoting the Bible, there is a piece that we can refer to. It says in Luke 21, verse 25, and there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars. And on the earth, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. Now we're living in an unprecedented end time situation. We are seeing signs in the sun. The sun is a huge focus for the whole world, believers and non-believers alike at the moment. We're seeing signs in the moon. We're seeing signs in the stars, in the sky. On the earth, we're seeing a major distress of nations with perplexity. Chaos is reigning everywhere. And the seas and the waves are roaring. Storm after storm after storm. And on top of this one, the next one is already building. And they're only rating up to category 5, but they say it's going to be bigger than category 5. They just don't have a rating, so they're going to call it a 5+. Because they're too scared to rate it. Because when we rate it to 6, it's going to be pushed to 7 and then to 8 as you go into the time of Jacob's trouble. People have no comprehension of how bad this is going to get. But I digress. What I'm trying to get at here is, besides the hindrance from government, which I fully believe is taking place, besides the evil at play in the background with all these things, besides all this chaos surrounding this, besides mega proof that the storm is basically almost unnatural, that it could very well be a HARP situation, weather manipulation, abso-freaking-lutely. I really believe that is very high on my list of possibilities for this, and it would explain why there's so many multiple storms hitting at the same time. That being said, whether it's HARP and man's manipulation or God's judgment and actual storm situation building towards end times, that scripture talks about us seeing these things take place. Not that it's different if man gets involved and causes this chaos for ourselves, for our own nefarious and evil purposes or not, but that these things will happen. And in these situations, there are innocent people whose lives have just been destroyed, wiped out, homes gone, businesses gone, loved ones gone. Some of the numbers, unofficial numbers coming out of that area, is that they've gone over 1,000 bodies recovered, and they've run out of body bags. So if I'm wrong on that, excuse me, but these are the numbers that I'm seeing coming out all the time. And they say they're still assessing, and that this will go up exponentially as time goes forward, because it is such a bad situation post Helene. So I really just want to ask you, pray. Prayer changes things. The fervent prayer of the righteous availeth much. Pray for these communities. Pray for these people. Pray for the aid to get through. Pray for the government that's hindering things to be unable to hinder things. Pray for the Lord to intervene. That's your number one thing. Number two, if you live anywhere close to these areas in America, and I'm talking to you Americans, contact the churches in those areas that might still be functional. Ask them, what are you guys doing? How can we assist you? How can we get things to you? Can we send you supplies? Can we send you money? Can we come and volunteer to help in the area? See how you can get involved to make a difference in this situation. Dig deep, seek the Lord's face, and see what you can do on the ground to actually make a difference to these people that are struggling. Because you never know, you might be the person that can change the life of someone who has not been reached, touched, or assisted in the situation because you happen to be nearby. I live across the ocean, so I unfortunately can't. I can send money and I can do those kind of things. Absolutely, these things we do in this ministry, and we send that kind of relief package that'll go. But unfortunately, that's probably going to end up where all these other supplies go, and I have to pray that it gets there. But for you that are there, get involved, pick up the phone, speak to those ministries around that area or in that area that are actively there, and see how you can help in this situation. Be the hands and feet in these moments. These people need prayer. They need to see Jesus around them. God bless. Keep looking up and keep caring. Shalom.